These are 5 old Hollywood actresses who refused to shave and still became some of the biggest stars in the world. What most people don't realize is that the expectation for women to remove their body hair didn't exist before 1915, because it was invented, manufactured, and sold to American women by razor companies and fashion magazines in less than 50 years. The few actresses who never bought into it tell us more about Hollywood than any glamour reel ever could. So let's start at the beginning. The invention of a beauty standard. A single ad changed everything. In May of 1915, Harper's Bazaar ran a spot for ex-Bazin depilatory powder featuring a woman in a sleeveless toga, and the copy read, "Summer dress and modern dancing," combined to make necessary the removal of objectionable hair. That word, objectionable, carried an enormous amount of weight. 2 months before that ad appeared, nobody in America called women's underarm hair objectionable. But fashion was shifting fast. Sleeveless evening gowns were gaining popularity. The tango craze was sweeping ballrooms across the country. And suddenly, there was an exposed underarm that someone decided needed to be smooth. Gillette seized the moment 2 months later, launching the Milady Décolleté in July 1915, the first razor ever marketed to women. Their advertising copy declared, "Fashion says evening gowns must be sleeveless. The woman of fashion says the underarms must be as smooth as the face." And here's a detail most people miss. Gillette never used the words shave, a razor, or blade in those early ads because those were masculine terms, so they substituted the word smoothing instead. By December of 1915, the company pitched this same razor in Ladies' Home Journal as a Christmas gift for women. Legs came next. Hemlines reached the knee around 1927. Bare-leg bathing suits entered fashion, and the first Harper's Bazaar ad focused primarily on leg hair ran in 1929. By 1934, hair removal campaigns reached the middle-class Ladies' Home Journal, which meant the practice had moved well beyond the elite and into the expected norm for ordinary American women. The magazines themselves weren't subtle about enforcing it either. Harper's Bazaar wrote in 1939, "Ankle socks on the campus are a fine old institution and all very well, but not on furry legs." 2 years later, they went even further, writing, "If we were dean of women, we'd levy a demerit on every hairy leg on campus." And that's when World War II finished the job. After Pearl Harbor, silk from Japan vanished entirely. DuPont's nylon, which had debuted on May 15, 1940, with 4 million pairs of stockings sold in just 2 days at $1.25 a pair, got diverted to making parachutes, ropes, and powder bags by the War Production Board. Stockings disappeared from American stores almost overnight. Women turned to what were called liquid stockings, leg makeup produced by Max Factor, Helena Rubinstein, Elizabeth Arden, and others, while department stores opened what they branded leg makeup bars. The connection between leg makeup and shaving became explicit in a 1943 Life magazine feature that stated, and this is a direct quote, "It is important to have well-scrubbed, shaved, and exfoliated legs to begin with." Shaving had stopped being about beauty alone and become wrapped up in patriotism and the war effort. Pinups reinforced the whole thing. Frank Powolny's 1943 photograph of Betty Grable, that famous over-the-shoulder shot, ended up owned by 1 in 5 American servicemen, and smooth bare legs became a home front symbol almost overnight. When nylon stockings finally returned after the war, the demand triggered actual riots. 30 to 40,000 women lined up in Pittsburgh for 13,000 pairs, and in San Francisco, 10,000 women broke a store window trying to get to the supply. Those were the nylon riots of 1945 and 1946. 98%. That's the share of American women aged 15 to 44 who routinely shaved their legs by 1964. An industry had taken a practice that barely existed and turned it into near-universal behavior within a single lifetime. Not every woman went along with it, though. And in Hollywood, the very place you'd expect the most conformity, a handful of stars quietly held their ground. Number 5. Ingrid Bergman. The woman who tops this part of the list said no before she even made her first American film. Ingrid Bergman arrived in Hollywood from Sweden in 1939. At 24 years old, David O. Selznick, the most powerful producer in the business, and the man who had just delivered Gone with the Wind, wanted to sign her. But first, he wanted changes. Her eyebrows needed plucking, her teeth needed capping, and her name needed changing. Bergman turned down all three. Irina Selznick, the producer's wife, looked at Bergman's face when they first met and asked, "You mean you have nothing on your face?" Bergman's answer came fast and flat. "I think you've made a big mistake. I'd rather not do the movie. I'll take the next train and return home." She meant every word. Selznick backed down. This story centers on eyebrows, teeth, and her name, not body hair specifically. And I want to be upfront about that. What makes Bergman's case essential, though, is that she represents the cleanest documented example of an actress overruling the entire Hollywood grooming pipeline at the contract stage. She walked into the most powerful studio system in the world and told them her face was not up for negotiation, and she still became one of the biggest stars alive. 3 Academy Awards followed: for Gaslight in 1944, Anastasia in 1956, and Murder on the Orient Express in 1974. History proved her right on every count. Number 4. Marilyn Monroe. This one catches people off guard. Marilyn Monroe, the most glamorous woman in Hollywood history, refused to remove her facial hair. Monroe carried heavy vellus hair, commonly known as peach fuzz, across her face, and the studio wanted it gone. Her answer was no. Hollywood costume historian Jean London, who lectured extensively on Monroe and her wardrobe, described it this way: "She had the heaviest peach fuzz beard of any actress in Hollywood. They wanted to remove the facial hair, but Marilyn absolutely refused." What made that refusal brilliant was the physics of it. When studio lights hit Monroe's face, that fine layer of hair caught the light and created a natural soft focus glow around her skin, which eliminated the need for diffusion lenses, lace filters, or the old trick of smearing Vaseline on the camera lens, techniques that other actresses of her era relied on to soften their appearance on screen. Her makeup artist, Alan Whitey Snyder, developed a Vaseline-based foundation technique that worked with the peach fuzz rather than against it, and the combination produced that luminous, almost otherworldly quality that became Monroe's signature look on camera. When people ask how Marilyn Monroe achieved that dreamlike softness, that glow, part of the answer is facial hair that the studio told her to remove and she refused to touch. Number 3. Anna Magnani. Anna Magnani might be the most important name on this list, and the one most American audiences have forgotten. Born in Rome in 1908, Magnani became the face of Italian neorealism, a film movement that rejected Hollywood glamour entirely in favor of real locations, real faces, and real emotions. Her defining films include Rome, Open City in 1945, Bellissima in 1951, and Mama Roma in 1962. The Rose Tattoo earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1955, making her the first Italian woman ever to receive that honor. Her entire career rested on the refusal of artificial beauty. The quote she's most remembered for, cited everywhere from Italian press to a June 2022 general audience by Pope Francis, goes like this: "Please don't retouch my wrinkles. It took me so long to earn them." That line speaks to wrinkles specifically, and I want to be transparent about something. The documented evidence about Magnani covers her face, her lack of makeup, and her hair generally, but not body hair in particular. Her broader philosophy, though, leaves little room for doubt about where she stood. She rejected every element of the Hollywood beauty machine without exception. Jean Renoir, the great French director, called her probably the greatest actress I have ever worked with, the complete animal. Tennessee Williams, who wrote The Rose Tattoo specifically for her, put it this way in Life magazine: "She is simply a rare being who seems to have about her a little lightning shot cloud all her own." The British Film Institute described her persona as built on earthy intensity and resolute lack of glamour. That quality wasn't incidental to her stardom. It was the entire foundation. Number 2, Sophia Loren. Anyone who has spent time looking at vintage Hollywood photographs may have come across this image already. Sophia Loren in Venice, 1955. Wearing a white embroidered dress on a Grand Canal water taxi, with her arms raised and her underarm hair plainly visible. Unretouched. Published for the world to see. This is not gossip, and it's not a blurry paparazzi shot that someone enhanced online. It's an Archivio camera photo image, a professional studio photograph, and additional unretouched stills from her 1957 film Boy on a Dolphin Show, The Same Thing. These photographs circulated in European publicity materials without anyone raising an eyebrow. Here's what I want to be careful about, though. No direct interview quote from Sophia Loren on the subject of body hair has been verified. Plenty of websites attribute statements to her, but when you trace those quotes back to their actual sources, they dissolve into nothing. So I won't put words in her mouth. What is documented is context. In parts of Europe, particularly Italy in the 1950s, women's underarm hair carried no taboo. It wasn't a statement, and it wasn't rebellion. It was simply how things were. Loren, even as she crossed over into American cinema with films like Houseboat in 1958 and her Oscar-winning performance in Two Women in 1960, never adopted the American convention. The photographs are genuine, the cultural difference is real, and the rebellion framing is something we've applied after the fact, but the fact itself remains undeniable. Sophia Loren is now in her 90s. Her 2015 autobiography, Yesterday, Today, and Tomorrow, emphasizes self-acceptance as a lifelong value. Those Venice photographs remain some of the most striking images from old Hollywood precisely because they show a woman considered the most beautiful actress in the world, looking exactly as she naturally was. Number 1. Silvana Mangano. The strongest case on this list isn't a still photograph or a secondhand anecdote. It's preserved on celluloid for anyone to see. Silvana Mangano was born in Rome in 1930 and won the title of Miss Rome in 1947. 2 years later, director Giuseppe De Santis cast her in a film called Bitter Rice, or Riso Amaro in Italian, and what happened next became one of the most talked about moments in post-war European cinema. In that film, Mangano performs a famous boogie-woogie dance sequence. She puts her hands behind her head, raises her arms, and dances, and her unshaven armpits are clearly, unmistakably visible on screen. This isn't a single freeze frame that someone captured decades later. It's a sustained, choreographed sequence where the camera does not look away, making it a deliberate artistic choice by both the actress and the director. Film critic Glenn Erickson, writing about the Criterion release of Bitter Rice, described the moment this way. When released in New York in 1950, I can imagine a packed art house audience audibly gasping when Silvana raises her arms in her dance, revealing unshaved armpits. The American Catholic Legion of Decency condemned the film, citing suggestive costuming, sexual tension, and suicide motif. None of that condemnation slowed Mangano down. Bitter Rice made her a global star, and she went on to appear in Anna in 1951, Ulysses in 1954, and Luchino Visconti's Death in Venice in 1971, winning 3 David di Donatello Awards for Best Actress along the way. Today, Bitter Rice sits on Italy's national list of 100 films to be preserved. Mangano's unshaven dance in Bitter Rice stands as the single strongest piece of visual evidence from the golden age of a major actress appearing on screen with visible body hair, and thriving because of it, not in spite of it. Why this story matters. 5 names and 5 anecdotes could wrap this video up, but the real story runs deeper than any individual actress. between 1915 and 1964. One of the most effective marketing campaigns in American history reshaped how women related to their own bodies. Almost no American woman shaved her underarms in 1915. By 1964, 98% of women aged 15 to 44 routinely shaved their legs. That transformation didn't happen because women collectively decided they preferred smooth skin. Razor companies, fashion magazines, and Hollywood created a norm, then enforced it so thoroughly that within a single lifetime, it became invisible, stopping to look like a choice and starting to look like nature. None of the women on this list launched a movement. No organized feminist critique of shaving existed before 1968, when the New York radical women protested the Miss America pageant in Atlantic City on September 7th of that year. They threw bras, girdles, curlers, false eyelashes, and copies of Ladies' Home Journal into what they called a freedom trash can. And this part matters. Nothing was burned. An Atlantic City ordinance forbade fires on the boardwalk, and the entire bra-burning myth came from a reporter who drew an analogy to draft card burning. 2 years after that protest, in 1970, Germaine Greer published The Female Eunuch and delivered one devastating sentence. The more clothes women are allowed to take off, the more hair they must take off. Mangano, Loren, Magnani, Monroe, Bergman, none of them used that kind of language. None of them framed what they did as political arguments. They were simply living in their own skin, inside an industry that spent 50 years telling women their natural skin wasn't good enough. That might be the most radical thing any of them ever did. One more thing before we close. If you search online for lists of old Hollywood actresses who didn't shave, names like Gina Lollobrigida, Brigitte Bardot, Claudia Cardinale, Audrey Hepburn, Ava Gardner, and Greta Garbo appear everywhere. I looked into every one of those claims, and the evidence falls apart on contact. It's a circular pattern of websites citing other websites, with none of them tracing back to an interview, a biography, or a photograph. Nobody on this list earned their place without real evidence, whether that meant on-screen footage, professional photographs, documented quotes, or the testimony of people who worked alongside them. The honest version of this story turns out to be more compelling than the clickbait version, because it reveals that the norm itself was recent, commercially manufactured, and never as universal as we were led to believe. These 5 women are the exceptions that prove the rule, and the rule was only written about 100 years ago. Thank you for watching.